Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be taking another look at composition and framing when shooting in the urban environment and how we should be filling our frames with the right amount of content and detail to produce the best street pictures that we can. As well as my own pictures, I'm going to be looking at the pictures of the photographer Alex Webb to help illustrate my points, as his photographs are often brilliant examples of how to use every part of the frame to full effect. It's surprising how much you can learn from simply looking more closely and understanding how those images have been built. I recently gave one of my long-term students a homework project to take 5 pictures by Alex Webb and then to present to me on how they spoke to her and what made them successful as street photography in terms of their composition. My student, Sophia, who is learning the craft of filmmaking and is currently working hard on her compositional techniques and recognises the power of good framing in both still and moving images. The same principles apply for both, and the study of the work of such photographers as Alex Webb will go a long way into improving your framing and the structure of your images. His pictures can be quite complex and often full to the point of brimming with content. But everything seems to belong in these compositions. Nothing is there by accident and everything seems to fit by design and takes up its rightful place. These images are never overdone. Sophia's feedback was most interesting in terms of how her eye reacted in what she initially saw when first looking at the images. For example, in this picture from Mexico in 1987, she described how her eye worked in a sort of circular motion around the image, starting with a man in shadow at the top left of the image, and then moving onto the area around the top right part and working its way around to the hidden character inside the box in the foreground. Her eye, she said, then repeated its journey again, describing it as a sort of circular composition. In the next example, she described this picture as a sort of organised chaos, which sums up quite a lot of Alex Webb's work, I think. There is a lot going on here for sure, much of it seemingly at odds with itself, but somehow it looks so harmonious. Disparate elements coming together to form a perfect whole, if you like. There is depth here too, created by the open hatch and the figure seen passing through within the space, and also from the reflection in the mirror. The strong colour palette is accentuated by the mustard and ketchup bottles on the table, which provide little points of colour detail that sort of create highlights. The neatness of the table setting brings a certain order to the composition and also some perspective. Another example comes from this next picture, which suggests different stories in a single image. 3 sets of people, each projecting a different mood or message. The figure passing on the left of the image, either very camera shy or perhaps shielding himself from the sun, adds a sort of anonymity. Whereas the couple embracing on the right hand side, who seem oblivious to Alex Webb's camera, or perhaps are performing for it, with their relaxed and happy demeanour. And then, framed by the arch of shadow in the golden light, the silhouetted subject of the man holding a young child, in what looks like a moment of tenderness and repose. Again, there is a lot happening in this image, but look how gloriously it all comes together. Everything belongs and nothing is too much. It's a full frame, but there is no clutter or unnecessary detail or content. It all works so harmoniously together. This is the takeaway message from looking at these images, and I have tried to embrace this way of thinking with my own work, but also to look at the opposing view of filling the frame with less to get more, using space and framing to balance an image while still taking care to utilise all parts of the frame in a composition. Just because there are fewer things going on in a scene doesn't mean that we should be less focused on how the scene should be presented. So I'm now going to look at 3 of my pictures as a counterpart to the work that we have already seen. My style is very different to that of someone like Alex Webb. I shoot in high contrast black and white for a start, and I have a more minimalist approach as it suits my personality. Now, of course, I'm not comparing myself as a photographer to someone like Alex Webb in terms of my ability or my creativity. I only refer to him as a comparison to illustrate 2 different styles with a similar theme. First up is this image I took just before Christmas during a night workshop I did around the South Bank in London. The main subject and focal point is of course the silhouetted figure checking his clipboard in the lower left side of the image, and to this the eye is immediately drawn. This provides a point of scale and perspective, which grounds the image and helps to make sense of the overall composition. The architecture surrounding him has been reduced to simple shapes and forms, common with the high contrast minimalist look. By close cropping the scene when composing, I have attempted to keep everything controlled and confined, so that the eye is not too distracted, and even though the viewer will explore the image in full, the eye will return to the main point of focus quite naturally. So this is perhaps another example of controlled chaos. The eye is able to make sense of it all because it can recognize something real and tangible within it. This is another image taken from the same spot during a bright spring morning. The same principles apply, using the figure in exactly the same space to control the eye and keep everything in perspective. This image is more complicated by the increase in the areas of light and dark. Using the human form in images like this is a great way to bring scale and perspective. This next image is quite geometrical, and the lines of light and architectural detail tend to dominate the structure. This was taken around the area of the Lloyd's building in the City of London, at around the time that they were making some changes there a few years ago. I wanted to capture the flow of human traffic passing through the area, which helps to bring the city space to life. However, I wanted to capture it in a semi-abstract way without recording too much detail. The way the light and shade fell allowed me to do this, and this is what I like when shooting in the city environment. I've exposed for the highlights, and the light playing off the main character is enough to create the amount of detail I was looking for. Stopping down to f16 has meant the image is clear and sharp throughout. I wanted a sense of confinement again, so framing has again been kept tight, limiting any extraneous objects and the amount of sky getting in. Next is another geometric style shot, but broken up more purposefully, with the woman in a white dress passing through the space. Sometimes on your photo walks, you may encounter a character in the street that you want to capture, but the surroundings may not be what you're looking for. So guessing the person's likely direction and looking ahead may suggest a space that is more suitable. This was the case here, and I could see that the large metal sculptures would provide an interesting environment in which to capture her. They almost feel a bit threatening as they dominate the space, but her nonchalant wander through them is a nice contrast. Her presence is also a nice contrast to the harshness of the high contrast feel of the light, metal objects and dark shadow areas. I framed with one of the sculptures in the foreground on the right hand side to help bring a bit of depth, and it also helps to keep the eye focused on the main area. Spot metering on the woman's dress keeps the whites right and the shadow areas dark enough to suppress unwanted detail. Well, there you go, a few tips and techniques that you can use to help bring a little bit more impact to your street pictures. Whether you're shooting in a more open street style or your preference is for a more minimalist, high contrast look, the principles regarding framing and compositions are sometimes the same. Pay attention to what you are including in the frame and ask yourself whether everything has a place in the shot or whether certain things should be omitted. By giving each area in the frame its due diligence, you will ultimately start creating compositions that will be stronger and have more impact. Thanks very much for watching, and let me know your thoughts in the comments.